All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new segment. This is called What Up, Teach? And it's named after the show The Good Place, where Eleanor, the main character, is learning ethics from Chidi. And I'm trying to figure out which episode it's in, but she addresses Chidi as What Up, Teach? So I've been going back through the show and trying to figure out which episode that's in. Anyway, what is this segment? So over the past couple days, I've played a couple of 15-10 games on chess.com. And through these games, I've learned a couple of things, and I compiled them into this video, which is why it's called What Up Teach. Because what I'm going to do is take what I've learned and distill it into this video and teach it all. So, in addition to putting this on Twitch, I am live streaming there, but I am also going to put it on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can follow me on Twitch. My handle is Not Quite Good at Chess. I'll put a link in the description as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. Now, if you're looking at the screen, you see that we have an agenda, and we're going to cover 3 things over the course of 4 different games. The first thing we're going to cover are tactics, and these are a couple of tactics that are from my games. The second thing we're going to talk about is decision making, talking about making simple decisions versus complex decisions. And then the third thing we're going to talk about is endgame planning. So these are all things I've learned from my game. Hopefully you're able to learn from them too. But without further ado, let's jump into it with the first position that we see on the board here. So this was from the very first stream I did. And I ended up winning this game. And here I won because of... I didn't win because of this particular tactic. But this is a tactic I missed in the position. Generally, in this case, white's position is winning, and I ended up playing knight to c4. Now, there is a better... Oops. So, I'm going to go back. Just undo... Oh, what have I done? Okay, let's close out of this and reopen it. Okay, so, like I was saying, in this position I played knight to c4, which is a fine move. It is still winning for white. But there's a better move that actually wins material. And you might have already seen it on the board because, well, ChessBase shows the move even if you turn off assisted analysis. If anyone knows how to fix that, just let me know in the comments. I sent a help ticket. Hopefully they respond. But if you're on YouTube, pause the video. If you're on Twitch, I'll give it a moment. See if you can find it. Okay, so since I literally don't have any subscribers, I'm just going to go ahead and share the answer. But the move that wins material is knight to c8. So what this is doing is we are threatening the rook here. We're threatening this rook. And so the rook has to move. And so most natural move for black is moving the rook over here. Now, after this, what white can do is white can go ahead and capture this bishop. And black is forced to recapture over here. And the end of this tactic is this nice move, bishop to c5. And we've managed to skewer the queen and the rook. So once the queen moves, let's just say the queen moves back here, we can play bishop takes rook. And then we have either queen takes bishop or king takes bishop. White is up material, and we'll go on to win this game. So maybe you got that, maybe you didn't. I didn't find it during the game, but I thought it was a very interesting tactic. Okay, on to the next one. So let's close out of this. No, I don't want to save. And let's open up the next game. So this was a game that I played against Elias3315. I believe it was another game in the Mora Gambit. The last one was also from the Mora Gambit. And after a while, we reach this position over here. Sorry, I skipped through the opening. If you're interested, check out the streams for the full video. So what has black just done? Black has just threatened my knight by playing b4. And, okay, so there's really 2 options here for white. The first option is white can take this knight and move it to a4. And this is what I did. So by moving to a4, we're forking the queen and the bishop. We're forcing the queen to move somewhere, basically. And this is actually the strongest move in the position. but a move that is almost as good. So this move is the strongest, but it doesn't give white any significant edge. The move that is almost as strong is actually to just take here with the pawn. And I believe the computer evaluates this as equal. So let's take a look at what happens when we move the knight here, which is what I did in the game. Now, black plays queen to b5. And at this point, my queen is being attacked, and so is my knight. So I really have two options. I can either move the queen to defend the knight, or I can exchange queens. And in this case, I decided I would exchange queens. Now let me show you why this leads to trouble. Black is going to recapture, and my idea was, okay, I'm going to recapture this bishop. He'll recapture with the pawn. I'll take this pawn, and then he's obviously going to take this pawn. Right? No, not right. What black did instead was he pushed this pawn to c4. And now, if you take a look, you see that I have a bishop problem. So this bishop is pinned. The only square I can move it to without it being captured is moving it to b1. And here's the thing. If I move it to b1, my rook is hanging. So he just plays rook takes rook, and he's winning material. Now, here's the other thing. Objectively, the computer says that this, I think it evaluates it as like 0.39. So, believe it or not, I have an edge in the position. But practically, if you go back to the stream, you see that I'm really struggling to figure out how to get this piece involved in the game. And an interesting thing to note is that there's actually not a big rush to get the piece involved in the game, but just when you're playing, it's always on the back of my mind. I'm always thinking about this. Whereas from this position, if I had just played takes and then black plays takes, well, you know, it's a very similar position. It's still pretty equal, and I would have been much more comfortable playing this out instead. So the main point I want to make here is that sometimes a complicated decision can confer a little bit of an advantage, but it may not be enough to be the practical decision to make in a game. I know if I could go back, I wish I would have taken the pawn instead of playing knight to a4. So hopefully in my future games, I'll be a little bit more practical about what I do. The reason I played knight a4 is I actually missed this queen move, which forces me to essentially trade queens or make a decision about my queen. I thought that he would move the queen somewhere, I would capture the bishop, and I didn't expect him to move his pawn here and create this blockade that hemmed my bishop in. So, good play by my opponent there. But actually I went on to win this game with some interesting tactics and moves. So let's go on to the next one. Now, the next position arises right here. Okay, now, I actually missed the best move in this position, but maybe you can find it. So, black just played rook to a4. And if you go back to the stream, I see this move, and I think, what is the point of this move? It's not really doing anything, because black really can't take this pawn. It's defended by this bishop right here. So why is black doing this? And honestly, the answer is, I don't really know. I didn't really figure it out. I managed to take advantage of it later in the game, but there was a way that I could immediately take advantage of the situation and get about a 1.39 advantage, according to the computer. So take a look, see if you can figure it out. I'll give it a second. If you're on YouTube, pause the video. And okay. What is the move in this case? Well, here, let me scroll down in my screen. The move is to play b3. And this is awesome. I mean, I'm attacking the rook, and I'm attacking the pawn here. And basically what's going to happen is if black takes here, well, I've solved my bishop problem. And now black will probably exchange rooks, and I'm very happy with this position. Now, if black decides, okay, I'm just going to move the rook back or just move the rook anywhere, well, either way, I've solved my bishop problem. Takes, 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 and again, we're getting the same result. I'm happy because I don't really have any issues with my pieces anymore. So yeah, playing b3, definitely the best move. Did I play this in the game? I did not. I missed it. Instead, what I played was I played f3. I just defended these pawns here. As you can see, black was attacking this pawn, so I just decided to reinforce it. Now, let's see if the next position shows it. No, actually, I wanted to come back to this position. So, even though this bishop is trapped, black is kind of in a bind. And in the game, I actually recognized this, and I think that helped me slow down a little bit. It helped me not panic in the moment. So, what is the bind that black is in here? Well, okay, it's a couple of things. Black cannot move this knight. If black moves this knight, then I have bishop takes this knight, and after rook takes, knight takes this bishop. Okay, that's pretty good. Now, what happens if, let's just say, black moves this rook? Well, black cannot move this rook because then just bishop takes knight. So, black's pieces are kind of, I mean, they're getting kind of trapped, and what ends up being played in the game here? I lost it, but let's just see what happened. So black really wanted to free his pieces, and he ended up blundering. He moved his knight to this square, which allowed me to jump in, capture this pawn, which would eventually allow me to free my bishop. Okay, but I want to go to the last tactical sequence. This is white to play and win material. See if you can find the combination. Okay, this tactical sequence I actually did find in the game, and what it is bishop to c2. So here we're hitting the rook, and what black has done inadvertently is he's trapped his rook in there. So that move a while ago where he moved his rook down, he actually ended up trapping his own piece later on in the game. Now, he wants to avoid me taking this piece, so black jumps in, he plays knight b3. But again, this is only the beginning of the tactical sequence. I can actually take this piece. After black recaptures, I take the rook, the bishop takes the rook, and boom, rook d8, hitting the bishop, hitting the king, and I'm up a piece, and this is just a winning endgame. Okay, so that's all I have for this game as well. Let's move on to the next one. Alright, now this game, I'm not going to go through the whole game. If you want to see that, go to the stream. Instead, what I want to do is focus on a position that I got in the endgame. Now, I was playing terribly in this game. Like, my play was heinously bad. Just, terrible. And I managed to fight back. And I got this position where I'm only down a pawn, which I'm thrilled about. And actually, this position is drawn. So feel free to pause and figure out what is the winning plan for white. How does white take this position and bring it to a draw? Okay, so if your idea was to create a passed pawn on the queen side where white has a majority, you're correct. And these are all computer moves, by the way. In the game, I had a similar idea, but my execution was not right. I didn't manage to neutralize black's counterplay on the king side. I got into some trouble there and ended up with an endgame where I had a draw chance, I missed it. It was kind of complicated, but basically I ended up losing this game. So, I'm going for this. This is the plan to go for. b5, and I'm going to run you through the sequence of computer moves. So I just pitted computer versus computer at a certain depth, and we can see how this plan evolves. So black goes with a check, king back, again another check, kind of pitching this pawn, and black is now going to try to target this h pawn, or perhaps get behind one of these pawns, which is going to be passed. Alright, so putting the rook in line with the king, preventing any of those checks. We have bishop coming out. This is one of the few squares the bishop can move to. When you have this configuration with the bishop here and the knight here, the knight is going to control some of these squares that the bishop wants to go to. And vice versa, the knight can't go there either. So anyway, we get the bishop out into the game. Rook attacking the bishop, a little bit of counter attack against the knight. And here we go. So the purpose of this move is, hey, if you take my knight, which black does, I'm going to take your bishop and be defending my pawn. So now moving the king into the game. White moves his king into the game. Again, moving the king further. And now we're going to attack black's pawn on the base point. Okay, black moves his rook back. We have rook a8, rook d4 check, king g3, king d5. Again, now threatening to take that pawn. Rook b8, king takes the pawn, rook takes the pawn, and black advances his f-pawn. Okay, white's got his passed pawn. Black has one passed pawn, which is connected. So rook back, king up, pawn up, and rook attacking the pawn. White moves his pawn up, black takes the pawn, white takes the rook, black takes the rook, and king squeezes into f4. And now we can push our pawn, separate the two connected pawns. White can pick up this pawn, and later on he will go ahead and be in time to pick up the last pawn. So the winning idea was to push the majority, create a passed pawn, make black commit his resources to that side, and then scoop up black's majority, split it up, and scoop up the pawns on the king side. Okay, now I want to go back to one idea here. This idea of pushing the pawn and splitting up the majority, splitting up the connected pawns. So this idea actually came up in the endgame that I played, and that's what I want to pull up next. So this is going to be the last piece that I pull up, but this is directly from the game. I got this position and I made the wrong move, and immediately after I made the wrong move, I was like, oh, why did I do that? Don't you hate when that happens? So I really should have taken a little bit more time. Hopefully next time I will, but again, the same idea here. Push the pawns. This is the chance to split the connected pawns. And now, if we have g4, well, rook takes. And if the king tries to capture this pawn, we end up in a theoretically drawn position. So this is the Philidor position, but it's just shifted up one rank. So it should be a draw. And maybe in another video, I will go over the Philidor position. So this ends up being a draw. Alternatively, if at this point black decides to take the pawn, well, we just scoop up this pawn, and now since this pawn is on the h file, the rook is actually cutting off the king. The king cannot advance to any of these squares. And, you know, black can try to give checks here and there. Oops. Anyway, you get the idea. Like, black can try to give these checks, but nothing is going to come of it until unless the king gets in the game. Actually, I just realized if black gives a check here, then we just take the pawn. And this is completely drawn. So, just the same idea that came up when I looked at how the computers played against each other actually came up in my game of splitting these connected pawns. Okay, so with that, I'm concluding the end of What Up Teach number 1. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's a little bit of a different video, I definitely learned from making it. Hopefully, you learned something while watching it. And for those of you on YouTube, if you want to follow me on Twitch, just look for Not Quite Good at Chess. I'll also put my Twitch link in the description. So thank you guys for tuning in. And after the next 5 streams, I'll be doing another one. So feel free to follow me, like the video, subscribe. I don't actually know what you do on Twitch. I'm just getting used to it, just getting started. But I really like streaming. It's a lot of fun. Even if no one's watching, I really do enjoy it. So anyway, take care, and I'll see you in another video. Peace. Stop streaming.